I don't know how many books I have read or movies I have seen in my lifetime. Have you ever thought about that? How many books or movies you've come across? But rarely do I remember quotes from either. I'm just not very good at that. I have friends and colleagues, maybe some of you, who can read a book and recite whole paragraphs from memory, or see a movie and repeat a whole scene of dialogue. I wish I could do that. I love folks that have that ability, but I do have to say, for some reason, two quotes, one from a book and one from a movie, have stuck with me, even though it's been years since I first came across them. Back in the mid to late 1980s, anyone here around like I was? A guy by the name of Scott Peck, he was a psychiatrist who was also a man of deep Christian faith, and he wrote a best-selling book entitled The Road Less Traveled. I will never forget the opening sentence of the opening paragraph of his book. It was simply these three words: life is difficult. Life is difficult. The other quote I remember is from a movie starring Tom Hanks as the quirky but innocently wise character, Forrest Gump. You know Forrest? You may remember that movie and quote, what am I going to say? Life is like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're getting. Those two quotes have come to my mind this week. Life is difficult. As much as I might want to be able to stand before you here today and deny that reality, I can't. As much as I might like to be able to offer you a simple 1, 2, 3 solution to make everything once and for all make sense, or straighten out every situation, or solve every problem, my honest assessment of life for all people is that life is difficult. Life is complicated and confusing and messy. And frustrating, and sometimes incredibly sad and heartbreaking. Now, I know there are preachers out there that have taken a look at the gospel, and they have found some way, something in the gospel that makes them say, if you only believe A, B, and C, or if you only do X, Y, and Z, then no more difficulties, no more worries, no more struggle, no more heartbreak. If not now, well, just in a short while. Have enough faith, just have enough faith, and it won't be hard anymore. Now, I'm an actor, right? Yes. I'm an actor. Amateur. But I'm not a good enough actor to convince you of that statement, that it won't be hard anymore. Nor have I found that message in the Bible. As I read the Bible is a book about people who struggle. And not just people who make choices outside the will of God. In the Bible, people struggle. People of faith and goodwill, they struggle. From the beginning, from the very beginning, there is struggle. Now some have said it's the woman's fault. We can just blame all the women, right? It's Eve's fault. Or others say, no, it's Adam's fault. He shouldn't have believed her. Right? Or it's the snake's fault, huh? This struggle. The Bible does not have a convincing argument about blame. It just says that's the way it is. Life is difficult. Life is difficult and life is unpredictable. You never know what you'll get in life. It's like a box of chocolates. And maybe that is because we don't have the whole picture. Somewhere the Apostle Paul wrote in one of his letters, we see now through a glass darkly or dimly. Our view may not be clear. It most certainly is incomplete. We don't know a lot of things, right? And sometimes we don't know what we don't know. And so when we come up against a situation that is shrouded in mystery, we often think that our first task is to look for answers or causes or somewhere to place blame. We try to fix the problem and we have no idea what we're doing because we have a limited view or understanding. Or sometimes we didn't even know there was a problem until it's almost too late. Or we've sought to smooth over the problem by just putting a fresh coat of paint on it, thinking that will take care of things. 5 years ago, Jean and I decided to have our home remodeled. We had lived in our house since 1994, and in that time, which may not be all that surprising to some of you, we had done very little to it, to update it or fix anything or do any preventative maintenance. And those of you who know me know that I don't own a toolkit. The toolkit that we do have at our house is in a pink case, and every tool has a pink handle. If that tells you anything about who bought the toolkit. Jean, bless her heart, has been very good about accepting my limitations in that area, even though I know she wishes sometimes she was married to Bob Vila or Chip Gaines. And if you don't know those names, look up HGTV, okay? These guys know about building stuff. So when we decided to have our home remodeled, we began interviewing contractors, which they might as well have been speaking Chinese to me. I mean, I was yeah, all right. But we picked out a contractor and we arranged how we were going to finance it, and we were excited about all that we were going to be able to do to make the house so much prettier and more updated, maybe even granite countertops and real hardwood floors and all that nice stuff. Well, our hopes for all that were soon tempered when our contractor started investigating more closely our home's structure and found that the sill, S-I-L-L, the sill in one part of the house was rotting and it needed to be replaced. I didn't know we had a sill. I knew windows had a sill. I did not realize that our whole house rested on a sill. Now, the sill, for those of you who are as dumb as I am about home construction, the sill is the board that rests on top of the foundation and it connects the rest of the house above to the foundation. Ours was rotted and would need to be replaced, which required our back deck to be removed and rebuilt. The house would have to be jacked up, and all in all, it would add about $15,000 to our remodel job. Now, if we did not fix the sill, that was my question, what would happen? Well, at some point, part of the house could very well collapse. The sill had rotted, you see, because of a water drainage problem around the deck that I had no idea was a problem. That wood had been rotting probably for years, and I did not know it. We needed a sill a lot more than granite countertops or hardwood floors, and I didn't know it. Now, I knew about the foundation, even me in my limited knowledge. I knew we had a foundation, a good strong brick and concrete block foundation, but I didn't know what connected the house to the foundation. Remember that, okay? Now, today's scripture story takes us with Jesus and three of his friends to the top of the mountain. And once we get there, something almost beyond description takes place. You you get this sense that the gospel writer is searching for words that are big enough and dramatic enough to do the experience justice. I mean, dazzling, radiant, glowing, transfigured. And suddenly there with Jesus and Peter and James and John are Moses. Well, he's been dead for centuries. And Elijah, same thing. They're all there together, and words cannot capture it. It's sort of like people who go to the Grand Canyon. Now, I've never been to the Grand Canyon. Anyone been to the Grand Canyon? People who go to the Grand Canyon, I've heard them tell how when they look out over that view, that amazing view of canyon so deep and sky so blue, as far as you can see, that's all you can see is the canyon and the sky, and they just stand there with their mouths open, looking and taking in that sight. And even though they may pull out a camera and take picture after picture, and from every angle they can get, when they get those pictures back, of course these days you got it right away, the pictures don't tell the full story, do they? Nothing can replace the experience of being there. So Peter, he's so taken by the experience, like many of us, he does not want it to end, so he suggests that they build some kind of temple or a memorial or a monument to the moment to preserve it, to keep it going. Peter says, let's all just stay right here. Let's all just stay right here, safe from the world of chaos and pain and suffering below. And that's a strategy not unknown in our world today. A practice of some religious groups, some churches. Just make a place where people of faith can get away and they can stay away from the world. They can stay up on a mountaintop. They can stay with their heads in the clouds, separated from what might seem to be making life so difficult, pretending like the world down there is somehow different from the sanctified world they've made for themselves. But Jesus says, that's not the plan. That's not the purpose for being there on the mountaintop. Jesus says we have to go back down the mountain. For the world at the bottom of the mountain needs to know the one you have met here on the mountain. Did you get that? And then Jesus says something so strange. He says to Peter, James, and John, when we get to the bottom of the mountain, don't tell anyone what you have seen. Keep it to yourselves until the resurrection. In other words, don't talk about it before the time is right. I almost wonder if Jesus thinks that their words will get in the way. When those three guys who went up the mountain with Jesus that day got back down to the bottom of the mountain, you see, they weren't the same three guys. For you can't have an experience like that and not be changed. They were changed. And maybe Jesus wanted others to see that change in them more than hear their words. Some things cannot be explained. They can only be experienced. This has been a tough week for us as a family here at South Main. Maybe one of our toughest yet. I regret, on the one hand, I was not here in person to be with you. But on the other hand, I'm able to be here with you now, in a way that my being away last week perhaps helps me better minister. You know, the words of Isaiah kept coming to me as I prayed, God, what do you want me to say or do this morning? And I kept hearing these words, comfort my people. The tragic events of Tuesday affirmed to me a few things. One is, life is difficult for all of us. And for some, that difficulty presents itself in ways that can sometimes send shockwaves among us all. Secondly, it does affirm to me that life is indeed like a box of chocolates. We never know what we'll get. We never know what might happen the next day, the next hour. And because of that unpredictability, we need a firm foundation to which we can anchor our life. And that foundation is right here. Right here for all of us. The foundation never leaves. Never moves. Let me say that again. The foundation never leaves and never moves. When and where the night is the darkest, the foundation's there. When and where the pain is the strongest, the foundation is there. When and where addiction is tearing most severely at life's very fabric, the foundation is there. God is there. Amen. I do not have answers to the why of last Tuesday. I must say I am bothered by how social media has been used, in particular, to become a venue for harsh judgment. And quite honestly, a lot of asinine banter. If you see it on Facebook, don't necessarily believe it, okay? Remember this, many people on Facebook and the like don't know what they don't know. Perhaps the most helpful comment I read, besides those who simply said, I'm praying, was from a friend of mine who wrote, my mother had an addiction, and I can tell you, addiction is complex. Addiction is complex. So we need to be on guard for charlatans or even well-intentioned people who would want to make sweeping judgments and hand out simple solutions. Addiction takes in so many aspects of life, and it crosses boundaries between physical life and mental life and spiritual life, between all that part of what it means to be a human being. And addiction doesn't just affect the person who's taking the drug or ingesting the substance. The addiction impacts whole families and whole neighborhoods and whole communities. It is a cruel, cruel disease for which we must all work together to find ways of healing. We don't know. One day there is progress being made. One day we very well may understand better the chemistry of the human brain and identify even DNA that contributes to some folks more easily falling prey to the demon of addiction and find ways to diffuse that. I certainly pray and hope so. But in the meantime, well, I certainly don't have all the answers, or many of the answers. I know this. Jesus loves me. This I know. Oh, how he loves you and me. God is love. In 1 John 4, we find these words, Dear friends, let us love one another, for love comes from God. Everyone who loves has been born of God and knows God. Whoever does not love does not know God, because God is love. This is how God showed his love among us. This is how he sent his one and only Son into the world that we might live through him. And this is love. Not that we've loved God, but that God has loved us and sent his Son as a sacrifice for our sins. Dear friends, since God so loved us, we also ought to love one another. For no one has ever seen God. But if we love one another, God lives in us, and his love is made complete in us. Tuesday reminded me again why God has put us here on South Main Street.